Today we're going to look at long and short stitch, but specifically for thread painting. Thread painting is the kind of embroidery you see that's very fine and sort of almost photorealistic in some cases. It's done with one strand of thread and you use many colours to get a really smooth change in your colour palette. So I've got 5 greens here and we're going to do a leaf, and I'm just going to show you hopefully how to get the best out of your long and short to get a particular look. So when you're choosing threads, these are not DMC, but they're okay. You want to choose numbers that are really close together, and you may think, well, what is the difference between sort of 700 and 701? But in the transition, because you're trying to get from this dark colour to this colour, your eye needs that really smooth sort of change to make it look smooth. I'm going to do a leaf. I'm just going to basically draw one. And I'm using 5 colours, so I'm actually going to just roughly split it into 5. You don't actually have to draw physical lines, as long as you sort of got in your head where you want the changes to occur. And we're not going to suddenly change at this point, we're just going to roughly change at those points. It'll get easier as we go along. So thread painting is done with one strand, which produces really fine work. I'm going to start with the darkest colour, and we are going to do an outline in one strand as well to hopefully give us a smooth outline. You want to choose a needle. This one has got quite a large head, so you actually want a needle with a smaller head as you can manage, because you also don't want lots of holes showing in your fabric. I'm just going to quickly go around doing back stitch, and this outline will be covered up by your actual stitches. So we have the outline of our leaf now, and that is to try and keep the edge smooth. I'm going to say smooth a lot in this tutorial because we're going to sew over that, so it gives us guidance, and it's better than just the pencil line. And we're going to go over our edging stitch that we've just done. Going to start in the middle. I'm going to start with a long stitch. Now remember, all your long stitches shouldn't actually be the same length, and all your short stitches shouldn't actually be the same length. Otherwise you're going to get brick stitch, and that is not the kind of look we're going for. We're going for a real delicate transition between the stitches and the colours. So you can do 2 shorts together, you can do long, short, short, long, any kind of combination of the long and short stitches that you like. You can see that I can fill in that space, so I'm going to go back and do another one there. When I got back into embroidery, thread painting was something I really wanted to try and really saw myself doing. And I have done some, but I have to admit that I find it incredibly difficult, not only because it is so sort of neat and tidy, and I'm not really a neat and tidy person, but it's using one strand to do everything is incredibly slow. And I'm really sort of someone who has a new idea and wants to move on quite quickly from projects. You can see my fabric is quite thin. Ideally you will have thicker fabric that you won't see holes in. So my longer stitches now are getting closer to my first line. I'm going to go over it, but I am aware that it's there. And we're going this side to this side, but you could also go this side to this side, or you could have dark all the way around the edge, getting lighter towards the middle. You will see this in a lot of kits. But it only really becomes thread painting if you are using the one strand and the many different colours to get the look. It is still just long and short stitch though, which you will see a lot, and I do prefer it usually to satin stitch. Okay, so that's pretty much that side done. With just the first row of stitching. So now I'm going to come back over this side. I mean, potentially you could just do one row of stitching actually, which would get you to your first division line. But I think I'm going to do 2 rows of the dark. Right, we're going to start on our second row of stitching. And for this, we're going to come up in the blank area and go back down into the stitches we've already done. So hopefully that really minimises the amount of little holes that you see. So I might not go all the way along, but I definitely want some more of this dark colour. Try not to split any threads that you've already sewn. And if you see it, you think there might be a gap. I think there might be a gap there. Not sure if the camera picking it up, but you can just go over, do another stitch. It is quite a forgiving stitch, long and short. I find you can go back and sort of make corrections by adding extra stitches if you feel like you've got a patch that is just too long or too short. You can add some extra stitches. So this is where my original line was. And to split your thread easily, I may as well just tell you this now. Separate one, hold it vertically, and just keep hold of the other 5 and just pull up. Separates it really easily, and these are all still all together. Which, if you're doing thread painting, you're going to be separating a lot of threads. As with the second row of the dark stitches, we're going to come up in a space and go down into the previous stitches. So here is our next line. I'm going to actually start there with this first stitch, going over the edge. That's a good match. You don't want to be able to see where one stitch ends and the next stitch starts. You want all of it to sort of look like it's overlapping. See, I could just go down there where this stitch is finished, but you might get a gap between the start of one stitch and the finish of the other one, so we're going to come down and tuck it next to it. You can see why thread painting takes such a long time. We're going to do a second row coming into our third section. I tend to use lots of different types of thread, whatever comes in a kit or whatever I've been gifted or picked up in a charity shop. I do have quite a big stash, and a lot of it isn't DMC. But I would say for something like thread painting, you do want the best threads that you can afford. If you're doing a really big project and you want that really kind of smooth finish, then DMC might be the way forward. I mean, there are other threads out there like Anchor is also a good brand. And this is giving quite a smooth finish. It's certainly giving the colour change that I'm looking for, but I wouldn't say it is as smooth as DMC. We're going into our third middle block now. So you can see I've almost still got gaps right back in the first, which we will fill in now. And we will overlap. Middle section is kind of the biggest. We will overlap into section 4 as well. Coming to the edge, we need to go over our back stitch. If you push the fabric up with your fingers, you can see where the stitches come apart sometimes, and you can see a little bit of the fabric coming through, so you want to try and get rid of all that so you can't see any fabric coming through. That's why I just did a stitch sort of over here. I'm moving on to our fourth section now. Again, very slightly lighter. And I would suggest you need really good lighting for, you need really good lighting for embroidery anyway, but this particular technique, to make sure you're covering every little scrap of fabric. you need great lighting. I feel like this is a slightly less subtle colour change. So I'm going to keep bringing it well into the previous section to try and get that blend looking nice. I have gone slightly inward here, so you can either keep your stitches straight all the way along, or I've sort of followed the shape a little bit more on this side. So here is actually the top line. I might bring the lighter colour a little bit further in. I'm going to do a few more extra stitches just to bring some up to the line, because I've actually done those quite uniform. There needs to be a little bit more variation. Once you look at it at the end, if you think, oh actually there's a bit of cloth showing through this bit, then you can go back, as long as you use the right green. There we go. How did I do? So your eye shouldn't be drawn to sort of one stitch in particular. And overall that kind of looks like 3 greens. When you start to look closer, you realise that actually there's a few more colours in there. So to recap, the best quality fabric and thread that you can afford, and some good lighting. Long and longer stitches, so don't do really short stitches. As many colours as you can to make the transition smooth, and coming down into the place where you've already stitched to try and minimise the black holes you get when you've made a bit of a hole in your fabric. And a small headed needle. And lots of patience and lots of time. It takes a lot of practice to get the look of long and short really how you want it. When you've seen other people's embroideries and you think, wow, I want to make that. It takes time. But hopefully I've given you some hints and tips there that you find useful. And if you're liking my content, if you could like and subscribe, that would help me out a lot.